What is shadow? Because people get it twisted.
Yeah, frankly, I made a fucking list. How has it changed how you feel about yourself?
Oh my God. I mean, how has it not?
I feel like doing shadow work allows me to see from up here versions of me that I don't love to then see it with love.
You're inviting them to have a little seat at the table, but you're like respectfully shut the fuck up.
And that shadow just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Exposing that piece of shadow lended itself to me living in this really vicious cycle.
This is the fucking self-awareness hell, right? The parts that we are willing to share and are like, ooh, it's uncomfy, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like, that's where the magic happens. That's where the healing happens.
Thanks for the therapy.
Don't you wish leaders of the world did shadow work?
Good morning, Los Angeles. How are you?
I'm good. I could use another coffee.
Same.
But I'm happy to be here.
Long drive. Traffic sucks. But that's not what we're here for. Literally no one cares. What is more,
I literally know
you moved to Los Angeles than like complaining about traffic.
Truly.
People here care way too much about how you got from point A to point B.
I mean, we were so angsty last night.
Oh my God. Well, we were hungry.
We were hungry. I think traffic is exasperated by hunger or needing caffeine. Absolutely. I think that's why we're a little.
Yeah. But it was made better by the fact that you were in the car with me.
Company. We said it felt like we were carpooling to middle school today.
It did, because I've been picking up Meadow to come to the studio.
Yeah.
And she's staying like 10 minutes away from me. And so I come get you and I feel like I'm like your
picking
older friend
school.
picking you up for school.
It's so cute.
Look at that.
It's fun.
Well, it could have been in another life.
We wouldn't be here.
I don't think we'd be friends. We wouldn't have been friends then.
We would.
Maybe, actually.
Elementary school, we would have been friends. Middle school, we could have been at odds. High school, we would have found our way back together.
You think?
Kind of.
I feel like we would have found our way back in college.
I think you were too cool for me.
Which is why we would have found our way back in college.
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
Because I was so MIA in high school.
But the thing is,
MIA.
I don't think I was too cool for you. I think you were cool. And I just couldn't
I definitely thought
cool.
I was cool because I was just nowhere to be found. I was like, I'm uninterested in all of this. It wasn't cool. It was trauma.
Yeah.
Like high school is the epitome of like mass trauma for me. I mean, speaking of shadow work.
Oh yeah.
My God. Like
speaking
high
of
school,
that.
I was trying to, you know, it's funny. My shadow was absolutely triggered last night, which is hilarious and serendipitous. And so we can get into that later because this is perfect that we're recording this today. But the version of it that was my like Pen 15 middle school self. So we can get into it. But I
want to hear about that. Well,
we will.
Okay.
We'll get there.
Today we're talking obviously about shadow work. And we have attempted to record this episode before, way years ago.
Did we?
Yeah. And it was weird and trauma dumpy. I don't know if it exists on the internet.
Probably not.
But we get asked this question a lot. And we've obviously addressed shadow work and we mentioned shadow work, but we've never sat down
to like
in
share
these more integrated versions of self to have this conversation. So we thought
we have some hindsight now. How about that? We have
Yeah.
some hindsight to share more insights rather than just be like, this is what we're exploring and it's still open. Sharing from a scar, not a wound. In some aspects.
Sure. Although it was so interesting because when I sat down to prep for this episode, I was making so many new connections that are applicable to my life now of how I see those behaviors still pop up, being like, thought I had worked on you, but
And this is why this show has helped us grow. Like having to do this is really what connects the dots. It's nuts.
Yeah. So should we get into it? And by the way, this is an episode that we want to have so that people can feel like a little curious.
Right.
And also know that like we deeply want to unpack this with experts on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I'm kind of speaking for you, but I feel like I can in terms of, I think you and I have really delved into this in our own personal healing in the past 2 years. Like throughout podcast time in the background, we've really dug into this more. And now we're at a place to share a little bit about it. My God, will we bring an expert on because we're not experts in this. But we have had really amazing experiences of getting to interview experts. So last Mental Health Awareness Month, last May, we were a part of an event that AIM Youth Mental Health, which is a nonprofit I work with, did. And we got to interview different panelists. And two of them were Kristen Sargent and Barry Michaels, who co-wrote the book with the tools with Phil
Mhm.
Stutz, who was that big Jonah Hill documentary. And
Mhm.
they specialize in shadow work.
I love the tools
Absolute
book.
shadow specialists. And we have friends, multiple friends that have worked with Kristen as a coach ever since. And she's amazing. And Michael was so cool. And I mean, cannot understate the value of their programming when it comes to shadow work. So whether it's
Yeah.
them or someone else, we'll bring experts on to unpack it. But we want to tell you a bit from our perspective what that healing's looked like for us.
Okay, take us through like what
Shadow.
is shadow because people get it twisted.
So, in the same way we've done an unpacking inner child work episode, shadow and inner child are intrinsically connected. One, because Carl Jung, the psychologist, was the one that like put the concepts on paper. Obviously
Mhm.
didn't invent them, but kind of like put them down and formalized them. And there's overlap with them. Like we're gonna get into it in our own experiences. I have a lot of overlap with them. However, your shadow is a piece of you, a version of you, a version of your identity that exists within you, like your inner child does. But the shadow is the most rejected aspects of self. So it's the most embarrassing, shameful, cringy, hateful, rejected, like
That you're rejecting and causing shame, putting
your
shame on. Yeah.
perception of
Yeah.
yourself, like the darkest, what you perceive as your most unlovable traits, your
Mhm.
darkest traits, whatever those are, those culminate into like a version of self called the shadow.
Mhm.
And when you can personify that version of yourself and then form a relationship with it, get to know it, have conversations, like heal it, interact with it, that's where this magic happens of learning to love every part of yourself in a way that feels grounded and integrated and kind of takes your power back. Like, we always
Mhm.
say what resists persists, or
Mhm.
like you have to feel through the feeling, you can't go around it. So, looking right at it, acknowledging it, giving it attention, giving it love, making it a part of your self concept is what takes away the shame or the power of that shame or hate
Yeah.
that you may have.
I think what's interesting about shadow work is that your shadow, they're not always bad traits.
No,
And this
not
isn't me
always. Yeah.
excusing shitty behavior, but like a way that I like to think about it are like, what were the things that you were teased when you were little? Like, what were the things that people made fun of you for
Yeah,
that you
that's
then
totally
became
it.
really embarrassed by and
Yeah.
you were ashamed of and you were
Yeah.
like, and then what's sad about it is that we abandon
That version of
those
self.
those qualities and those traits and that version of self in order to feel like we are deserving of love or people will love us more if we don't do those things.
Which is ingrained in us as a species. Like
Yeah.
being accepted by your community is it's survival.
Yeah.
It's how we survive. So it's such a natural thing to do that
Mhm.
to fit in because it's just ingrained in us in that way. So it's
Yeah.
natural and it makes sense. And you know,
It's like a
everyone does it
little
for a reason, but
yeah. I look at
reclaiming that back. Whew.
yeah. I look at shadow work like a little archaeology project because it's like you're
That's
uncovering
a cute
the
visual.
things that you could have buried and
Yeah.
some of which, yeah, you want to let go of and you're like, yeah, don't j'adore that one. But other things are like, maybe you were like, people always told you you were loud or you were like the class clown and like felt like everyone was telling you to fucking calm down and like
Mhm.
relax and like shut the fuck up.
Mhm.
And now you've like really internalized that and you're whatever. And we're gonna explore like
Or
how this has shown
trauma.
up for us too.
Yeah.
Or yeah, or things that if you've been in
Victimhood.
partnerships or if your parents put you down for something and all that sort of that. So it's interesting to like uncover and dig up those versions of self and see the ways in which like you can find the silver lining in them. And again, choose and put aside the ones you don't want, but like still love them and have acceptance and whatever. But then with the other ones, you could be like, oh my God, wait, I loved that about me when I was little.
Mhm.
I loved that childlike sense of wonder or that
Mhm.
like freedom and
Goofiness
the
or freedom.
goofiness and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
playfulness. Like I want to bring that back
Back.
in me, which is then when inner child work
I
gets
was just gonna
introduced.
say that. I was
Yeah.
just gonna say that. And I will say before we dive into, you and I really, I mean, the whole ethos of the show is that getting to know yourself and like feeling comfortable with
Mhm.
yourself never ends. So it's fun to do it together and to like kind of make it fun because
Yeah.
it never ends. This is a version of the work that fucking sucks. Like this is hard. This can
Yeah.
be so dark. This can be like some of the hardest feelings and emotions to move through. Like shadow work, when done properly, is hard work.
Well,
So I
yeah,
don't want to gloss over that.
for sure. I
This is
think
deep stuff.
I always think about what I tell you of like, and I've said it on the show before of how I wouldn't write things in my own journal because I was scared someone was
Yeah.
gonna read it.
Yeah.
Even when I like started living alone.
Right.
And I realized I wasn't so necessarily scared that someone else was gonna read it. I was just like ashamed to admit
Admit
it
it. Yeah.
or to really write those things down.
To make it
And
real.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
I think that's what shadow work, I don't want to say like forces you to do, but that's what it confronts you with,
Yes.
is you
Yeah.
having to be really honest
Yeah.
with the ways that, the things that you've done that you might actually not be proud of, or the ways in which you've betrayed and abandoned yourself
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
It's interesting. But let's talk about like the work of it. Like, what can it look
Okay.
like?
Oh my gosh, many, many different things. I think I first explored it in therapy, of course. It can look like reading books and learning about it. It
Hmm.
can look like meeting yourself in meditation. It can look like kind of like the tools, like these guided
Hmm.
visualizations, which I have a practice about it that I do often that we can get into. So it's similar in the way that we speak about mental health work is not one size fits all, and you can find different modalities to
Hmm.
serve you. You absolutely can in shadow work as well. I'll say personally, Barry and Kristen's work has been monumental for
Yeah.
me. And broken record, TBM, unblocked shadow, just because they really have those EMDR meditations. And sometimes the shadow's so ingrained, or as we know, like our subconscious beliefs, we can consciously think different things throughout our
Yeah.
day, but then those really deep rooted ones are harder to get into. So going into like a deep meditation, having those tones go back and forth, like doing the prompts to guide you through, that changes like from a very like bottom
Yeah.
up feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we'll link some resources in the show notes, of course.
Yeah.
But those are 2 that are really impactful for me personally. You can look up different information of it, but we always love working with a therapist or a coach,
Yeah.
reading, meditations.
Journaling is a really
Journaling
good
is
place to start.
huge. Journaling's
Co-Create has a lot of shadow work prompts.
yeah, we did that on purpose.
Yeah.
We made a lot of shadow work prompts in there.
Yeah.
Anything I'm missing
Um,
in terms of what it can look like?
I think what helped me, no, because Hoffman was like a lot of visualizations and a lot
Yeah,
of meditations and a lot of like thinking things through and being
yeah,
really honest with yourself. And I think that confronts you the most because you can't deny something you saw in a
yeah, dude.
visualization or in a meditation or something like that.
Having done some of it now, again, work never ends. Having done some of it now and being more familiar with your shadow, how has it changed like your perception of yourself or how you move or how you feel about yourself?
Oh my God. I mean, how has it not?
I know.
That's a hard question because it's changed. So this morning, before we came here, I opened up my Hoffman workbook and I did Hoffman, what, 5 years ago?
Mhm.
And I hadn't
First of all, wow.
I know. I
It's been a
hadn't
while.
read through. I'd glossed it over the years, but I hadn't like read. I remember like there was a part where you're like visualizing your dream life.
Mm,
And there was one section where I was talking about having a partner who's like feels protective
mm,
and like a provider, but mainly like that protective,
mhm.
like I think I used the word guardian
Safety.
and like
Oh, that's
safety.
beautiful. Yeah.
And having that and then feeling deeply fulfilled and like valued by my friendships and relationships and like being able to like be lit up in my friendships and being in like a home space that felt like a safe haven and not
Mhm.
because I needed to like escape the world, but because I felt really safe
No,
there.
yeah.
And I remember
Landing
like
place.
reading through that this morning and just being like, I have all those
All of that.
things. I have all of them. And what's really interesting too, and I think cool about shadow work, and also I think a good call out when people start to do work like this or they'll do like boundary stuff, people tend to cut a lot of people out of their lives. I remember when I decided to just start living as me, I was like nervous about it because I was like, how's this going to be
Mhm.
received? I have felt so welcomed
Mm.
and embraced because I think that, and I could be dramatic and they could be like, I don't notice any difference in Gabby, but like, I feel this like breath of fresh air and this relaxation because being me and actually moving in that way and being like just who I am
Mhm.
and then bringing that back to a group of women who have seen me through so many phases, who in another world I could be like, fuck that, I'm gonna cut these bitches off because I don't want them to like judge me anymore and like
Mhm.
whatever. It's this like overwhelming sense of like, there you are.
Mm. That's such a good way to
Like
say
we
it.
love you.
Oh, there you are. Yeah.
And so I encourage people, like, obviously, you don't want to keep people in your life who put you down and make you feel small and are jealous and make you feel like shit and resentful. None of that.
As you said, with the caveats, growing with community is a different level of acceptance too.
Mm.
Like it hits different. It's more poignant. It's more
Yeah.
felt deeply because they've seen every aspect of that self or all the eras or
Yeah.
the different versions of you.
But it's shifted my life in every single way. It's
Yeah.
given me the, like, I actually love myself.
Yeah.
And that was a feeling that before Huffman, like, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I really, really did not think I was like good. And it's funny because it gets you into that cycle of behavior where your behavior starts to reinforce that narrative over and over again.
Yeah, because you just get to prove it to yourself. And then
Yeah.
you're like, if I'm not good, why should I try? And look, oh, I knew I wasn't going to be good. And boom, I did the thing that I knew. You're just
Dude, life's
psyching
shitty
yourself into
sometimes and
it.
life's really hard, but like over the last 5 years, having the baseline of like, I know who the fuck I am
And
and
you
I love
radically love
myself
yourself. Yeah.
has made my life so much easier.
So much easier.
How do you feel like it's shifted for you?
Very similar ways. It reminds me of when we did our allow us to reintroduce ourselves.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about like the different versions of myself through the pod. Because I will say, shadow work, even before I had the language for it, I was familiar with the feelings and kind of have like moved around that just because my high school life was so fucking charged with trauma and rejection and shame and
Mhm.
mental health was not talked about then and every member of my family was dealing with it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I was familiar with the feelings without the language for it. But the past 2.5 years, it's very much been like the thesis statement of my
Yeah.
healing, essentially. And all of the qualities that I was sharing with you now about feeling calmer, feeling more grounded, feeling more powerful, feeling more myself.
Mhm.
Like that's all a reflection of this work.
Yeah.
You know how I've talked about in meditation how I feel connected to the version of me that feels like up and back. It's like my highest self version of me feels like they're back here.
Mm.
And like down here is more of like my thoughts and my feelings and my ego and who I
Mhm.
am in this moment. But
Mhm.
up here reminds me of who I am.
Yeah.
I feel like doing shadow work allows me to see up from up here this versions of me that I don't love to then see it with love. So,
Yeah.
like, rather being here and, like, feeding into that shame, the more you get to know it, the more you sit with that big picture perspective to look at yourself and be like, "Oh."
Well, it's like you're inviting them to have a little seat at the table, but you're like respectfully shut the fuck up, you know? Like sometimes is how I feel about my shadow.
I don't feel like shut the fuck up. I feel the opposite. I feel like you need to be heard. Like, you do I've
True.
rejected your voice so
True.
much that you need like, "Come tell me what you
I mean,
need, and
shut the
I'll
fuck
give
up
it
and
to
like
you."
you're not running the show.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's what I mean by
My
that.
shadow doesn't try to run the show, though. My shadow is very much more like hide the aspects of myself that I don't wanna be seen. So mine is more like letting them show.
Mm.
Yeah, because of
I
course, like,
think
we
I
have
have
different
split,
shadows, they come up for different reasons, yeah.
but it's like half and half because half of mine is that. Half of mine is
Yeah,
really shameful around a lot of traits, and then
yeah.
the other half is like the shield.
Totally,
So like
totally,
she
I see
wants her
that,
time to shine
I see
sometimes.
that. Oh, that's funny, I feel like you just unlocked, like, a ninth grade shadow self in me now. I will say, I have
Mm.
different like, I have a shadow self from 2nd grade that I've gone back to. Last night, my trigger, which we'll get into,
Okay.
is one that is, like, my Pen 15 middle school era.
Yeah.
I have, like, I have different age groups and different like, versions of shadow self that dependent upon what I need or what I'm feeling, I tap into.
Aside from what we just mentioned, like, are there any other reasons that we feel like this is why people should be doing it?
I mean, yeah, frankly, I made a fucking list. I'm just gonna read it
Read it.
because it's important. I'm just gonna read it. It gains confidence, self-love, and self-worth. You can
Mhm.
express yourself more freely. It allows you to release limiting beliefs and replace them with healthier aligned actions. It allows
Mhm.
you to not let others' opinions of you impact you too deeply. And in
Mhm.
fact, that allows you to connect with others
Turn your phone
better,
off.
allows you to follow your dreams and like kind of acknowledge them in the same way,
Yeah.
like to look at the shameful thing and put it on paper and know that it's real and then not crumble under it.
Mhm.
And it's also, I mean, for the people that want to go this way, it's probably the main thing impacting blocking your manifestations.
Yeah.
If we want to get into that aspect of it
Oh, we
too.
can because let me tell you
Okay,
what
so
I
let's talk
unlocked this
about,
morning.
let's get into personal experiences.
Okay. Should I do you want me to
You go
start?
first, please.
Oh, one thing I wanted to add to that too is like the tricky part is like not letting yourself internalize what you are acknowledging during this work as like you're bad. Like the more that you
Yep.
dig up these traits that you're ashamed of that you feel like are not good, like it's hard for you not to internalize that you're automatically bad
hmm
and not also then letting it be an excuse for your shitty behavior.
Which is a beautiful, beautiful case for why this work is so beneficial when done in tandem with a professional.
Yeah.
Because this is some sticky work that if you are
Can
not
get
in the
into
place to see
excuses.
yourself
Yeah.
clearly or to not parcel those things
Mhm.
out, like sometimes you need the mirror,
Oh yeah.
especially in this kind of work. So that's a beautiful call out for why this work is so imperative to do with a professional if you have access to it.
Okay, so the first time I really did this work was when I went to Hoffman's when I was 22. And I had been living with I mean like an immense amount of shame.
Yeah.
Like immense amount of shame. And shame is one of the most debilitating
Mhm.
feelings
Mhm.
because it just feels so heavy. And then like you just keep reinforcing the behaviors and narratives because you're like, I guess this is who I am. I guess this is what I'm gonna do. And it's just like
Ruins
a
your self-worth, your
vicious
self-love, your self-trust, how you connect with others, how you view yourself, what you go after,
yes.
what you think you deserve.
Yes.
Like, it just bleeds
Yes.
into everything.
Yeah.
Shame bleeds into everything.
Yeah. And it's so funny because like I pointed out earlier, like I had there's like different parts of my shadow, right? So it was like they showed up in a different way. So a lot of it was like there was a big through line about like attention.
Mm,
Like attention was a big thing for me. And like wanting attention
mm,
and how that's like wrong,
mm.
even though like we all want attention. And it came out in different ways. So like even now I've noticed it before like getting too far off of like, and I want to talk about this later of like how it's impacted my career of like even when I was younger and like I would put on shows for my family and I would do those things like I always feel bad if I'm in a room and most of the attention's on me. Like
Wow.
I like to
To
make
this
sure
day?
that to this day,
Yeah.
I like to make sure that everybody feels comfortable
Mm,
and everybody feels like they're having their moment to shine.
mhm.
And so even now, really trying to own the part of my career that I really do want to be on camera and I like being on camera, like even that feels a little bit like
'Cause
when I say I want to be in front of a camera, it makes me feel like you just want attention.
'cause I was gonna say, what does that tell you about yourself? Like, what does that mean? Like, you're selfish? Like, what's the
Yeah.
belief about yourself if you
I think
do like
it's
attention?
I think it's that like selfish, a little heartless, getting ahead of myself. So let's talk about like specifically, which I know you have experience in too, of like the way that it showed up with like shame around like sex or sensuality or sexuality and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And like
Huge.
I am someone who's always internally felt very comfortable with my sensuality and with like sex. And then that there was a lot of shame around that because not only is there a fuckload of cultural shame,
Mhm.
like within the Latin community and in a lot of different communities, but then there's that narrative around the boys that I was around. So it was like the typical Latina narrative of like, you know, the boys can do whatever they want, but they have to marry a virgin.
Mhm.
And if you're not a virgin, like you're a whore. But like, and then I remember like dating someone and it was like just so wrapped in
Mm,
shame around sex. And it was like little things. Like it
mhm.
would be like we'd be at a club and I dance the way that I dance. And he'd be like, you look like a whore, stop asking for attention. But if I wasn't dancing like that with him, then it was like, you don't want people to think I'm your boyfriend. You want people to think you're single. You're embarrassed of me. If we'd break up
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
and we'd get back together and we'd have sex and I did something different in bed, where the fuck did you learn how to do that?
Jesus fucking Christ.
And it was like, I just remember doing this dance with him without getting too trauma dumpy, where it was like, I just was never good enough. And I remember
Mhm.
doing this dance of being like, how can I behave as perfectly as possible to not upset him?
Mhm.
And I could never win because it's not a game that you're gonna fucking win
Yeah.
because there's no rules. The rules don't exist. He's
And
making
then
them up as we go.
and then you're also inherently abandoning yourself more and more and more
Yeah.
and more. And
Yeah.
that shadow just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Exposing that piece of shadow lended itself to me living in this really vicious cycle where I was like trying to prove to myself that I was lovable.
Yeah.
And that like these qualities, because what that relationship convinced me of was that he saw my shadow.
Mhm.
He was the only one that was gonna love me for it.
Mhm.
And that was the narrative that like not only was in my head, like he'd tell me,
Mhm.
no one's gonna love you like I love you. No one's gonna see this fucked up version of you and
And I'll
still choose
fix
to be
it.
with
He'll
you.
fix it. If you do what he says, he'll fix that shadow.
You'll
Yeah,
be a better person.
exactly.
And so I would
Oh,
get into
in the
this.
way that I'm like
No, my
viscerally
whole
trying to
body's like
protect you.
tensing.
Yeah.
I know. I haven't talked about it in
Ooh.
this way. I don't know if ever.
Not
And
publicly, I don't know.
no. And I
Yeah.
was thinking about it a lot this morning and I was like, yeah, I gotta talk about that. And I'm
Way
like,
to
my
release the
body's like
power on it.
tense.
Way to release the power. Should we take a deep breath?
And I just,
I'll fight him.
I know. I would just get into this vicious cycle of wanting to confirm that I was lovable.
When you're in that, it's so hard to see it.
Just, it sucks because it's like we keep ourselves in this cycle
Mhm.
of believing it.
Well, this is the fucking self-awareness hell, right? Like this is I think what you said, the first part of it is the awareness of your patterns and really radically honestly looking at yourself. But then I think right now in this new era of mental health, that's where everyone's stuck.
Mhm.
Versus like people like Vienna, the therapist that came on our podcast, that's amazing, is like, that is so important. And then at what point do we move the fuck on and start choosing different beliefs and different
Yeah.
behaviors and trying on new things? And that's why she always emphasizes grief
Yeah.
and like the grief of that old self or the grief of the pattern or that belief to then move forward. Cause that's where everyone fucking gets stuck.
Yeah.
And so we have to move out of that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting.
And it's an easy place to get stuck in. I mean, I've been stuck there many times and I am in other
It's familiar.
things I'm still working on. And yeah. It's also comfortable.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to change. Like,
Well,
oh,
'cause
I
you know
know
what's
I'm
gonna
shitty.
happen.
I know what's going to happen. And the unknown is so much. It's the biggest human fear.
Mhm.
Unknown in whatever capacity is so scary as humans because it's ingrained in us, right? Because
Yeah.
we're not supposed to die. It's ingrained in us to like be so scared of the unknown that it's so much more comfortable to like say sink into the pattern and just be like, well, I know myself. I'm just going to do it.
Dude, what's so funny about
I'm
it
a
too?
victim of my own pattern, my own behavior. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when you find like unhealed ass people that should not be in fucking relationships where I'm like, for the love of God, at Love is Blind. What's so funny about it too is that like you said it perfectly. It's like it's comfortable because we know the expectation. We know what's gonna happen. And even if it's a shitty outcome, we're fine with it because we know what's gonna happen.
And
I
then you also
remember-
prove to yourself, oh, look, I am smart. I do know myself because I knew I would do this. So I am self-aware.
Mhm. Yeah. There's no discomfort in it.
Yeah.
And I remember when I moved to New York and I was like actively deciding. That was right after Hoffman. And I was like, what would just happen if I like had other Latinos in my life that like didn't
do
make me
this to
feel like this? And like, what happened if I like
Wild.
went out and like shook my ass and had a great fucking time?
Like, what would it mean
And
about me if I did
what would
that?
it mean? And like, what if? What would happen? And lost some friends,
Mm-hmm.
as I mentioned, then was really pleasantly surprised by friends
Mm-hmm.
because they were like, bitch, we've been fucking waiting for you to be normal.
No,
Oh my
literally,
God.
literally.
And like, it's always worth it.
Mhm.
It's always worth it because you come out on the other side with yourself.
I don't know if you did this in the same way that I did this in my abusive relationship, but I romanticized it. I romanticized the process. I romanticized the pain. I told myself that passionate love meant that pain was a part of it.
That's all I
And
felt
this is
love
the
was.
I mean, Vicky Cristina Barcelona is one of my favorite movies of all time. Like,
Yeah.
I ingrained the romanticization of it.
Hey everyone, popping in to say thank you to all of the amazing people who listen and watch this podcast. We're so grateful for each and every one of you and truly cannot say thank you enough for tuning in every single week.
In order for us to keep bringing you all great conversations and continue building our community and raising the bar, we're asking you for some simple and free support. Subscribe to our channel, follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts, and keep up with us on social at Thoughts May Vary Pod.
And if you're looking to dive even deeper, you can join our exclusive Patreon community and download Co-Create, our digital manifestation journal filled with over 150 prompts to help guide your curiosity and unlock new layers of yourself.
Thanks for being here.
Okay, tell me about Miss Shadow.
I'll tell you about, so there's one that I just made like a fucking 10-minute long TikTok of. So I'll tell you about that one and then I'll tell you about the one that triggered me last night. So because we all know my core wound is I'm not good enough.
Mhm.
And you've actually very much in this container helped me honor a shadow because you were like, do you think maybe that's why you chose a job in mental health? And I was like, no, probably. Let me go cry about it. But so the way that I broke it down on this TikTok, and I'm going to try to keep it succinct because it's long, is I felt like in order to break that core wound and know that I'm good enough here as I am as is, I really needed to integrate like a mind, body, soul understanding of that. And the piece that put the nail in the coffin for me was the mind. Because if you know us, you know these two gals right here, we intellectualize till we're fucking blue in the face.
Yeah.
We know self-awareness hell well. Like we know how to intellectualize it and make it make sense to ourselves. And something about the like, I'm good enough here alone as is was so spiritual that I could feel it, but I needed to prove it to my rational mind to get over it. And I don't think you always have to do that, but I knew for myself, I was going to have to go through the wound almost, like through the mind to get over it. So there's like a whole like things I did for my spirit, things I did for my body to feel this, I'm going to talk about the mind stuff. So the first thing I did was explore my concept of morality. Like, what is good enough? What does that mean? Like, what makes me, why do I think
Yeah.
I'm morally superior if I serve others? Because my big wound was like, I'm not good enough unless I'm in service to others. And that feels
Yeah.
so deeply ingrained in everything, not only my parents, but like my whole lineage taught me. Like, you are not good unless you're of service to others. That is such a fundamental belief in my family.
Mhm.
And so I was like, the first piece was exploring morality. What is good? What is bad? What does it mean to serve others? All that jazz. The next, and what's nice about that is like, obviously, one parent is dead, the other parent's alive. And I talk to her about it constantly. Like, what do you mean when you said that? This is how I interpret it when we were little. Like, where do we agree on that? Where do we disagree? We still disagree on what that means, my
Mhm.
mother and I to this day. But there's a lot, it was really interesting to hear from her perspective how I ingrained those lessons and how she meant them.
Yeah.
Because you realize, like you said, like it's all your perception. It doesn't have to be
Mhm.
what the other people do. It's your perception of it. So that was really fun and interesting to unpack. And I'm grateful that I have a mom in a relationship where
Mhm.
we could do that safely. The next part of that was kind of like a greater sense of morality in terms of paying more attention to people that I feel morally superior over. Paying attention to people whose beliefs I disrespect or like don't agree with, and really trying to drop it and approach with curiosity and find what connects us. And
Yeah.
like consuming other news, consuming other media, like looking at people, different opinions of me, and not trying to change someone's mind, not necessarily trying to change my own, like literally just getting curious
Just, like,
about what I think
observing.
it means,
Yeah.
what morals are, how to interact with them,
Mm.
how they show up, how people, how service plays into that, how politics plays into that, the whole nine. Then I did the whole piece of, if I never serve another person a day in my life, what does that say about myself? What does it mean about me? What does it mean about my existence? What does it mean I deserve? What am I deserving of inherently if I only do something for myself for the rest of my life? Like unpacking all those beliefs. And this, I'm glossing over this. This is shit done in journaling. This is shit done in
Yeah.
meditation. This is shit done in all of that, right? Also, a lot of that has like the inner child overlap, right? Like so many of these are because they're beliefs that stem from my family and things I really ingrained from a young age. A lot of that was that inner child shadow overlap,
Mhm.
which is where we kind of can conflate these two things. And a lot of versions of my shadow are like past selves, inner
Yeah.
child selves. So there was a lot of overlap there. And having done inner child work a lot first, that felt kind of more accessible to me almost.
Mm.
So I really
That's
did this whole
interesting that you did that first.
inner child work was first for me before shadow, 100%.
Mine was the opposite, yeah. That's interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, that's cool. And then it's like, as in tandem of doing all of that, in meditations, I would kind of like receive downloads about myself until I like, there's no other way to say it because it feels so specific to me. There's no other way to say it, but I got enough messaging in my meditation, in my journals, in my beliefs, and what in all this exploration about how we are all interconnected. And I really
Mhm.
truly believe in the collective consciousness so much and how we're all here to exist and how like a tree doesn't think about if it's deserving of light or water or deep
Yeah.
roots. And because I'm as natural to this planet as a tree, why do I constantly feel the need to question it or prove my worth here?
Mm.
And like kind of realizing how we're all connected, doing that over, finding my connection to people that I vehemently, however you say
Sure.
it, disagree with, like all of that. And then realizing we're all part of the same. If I just unlock my light and know I'm good enough being here, I help other people believe that about themselves. So I was like, even if I think my purpose is self serving, it inherently unlocks something in the collective because we are all connected. And I've heard spiritual people say that. I've heard Ram Dass say that since I was 14. Like you can hear other people say it, but until you hear it in your own voice in these deep, deep places of like looking at the wound while receiving that,
Mhm.
it couldn't heal. And so like putting that all together is what fucking put the nail in the coffin on that wound for me. But then last night,
Yeah, what happened yesterday?
so funny. Okay, so last night, Dana's doing my hair. Our good friend Dana Ding, one of the best podcast episodes of all time in terms of like storytelling and seeing, never
Yeah.
knowing someone's story and whatever. Dana's doing my hair because we all know I can't do hair. And it's my biggest point of contention with the way I look, which inherently already sounds like shadow. Like you can hear it in me,
Mhm.
right? And I was telling her, I made a joke because I was like, oh, I have to find photos of me in like my Pen 15 like awkward phase for you because it's so funny. And I was like, no, 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 like it really shows why I have a good personality. Like you'll understand why my personality's fucking stellar because you'll see how ugly I was. And I'm doing a bit. I'm joking and I love myself and I think I'm
100%.
hot. But she was like, she turned off the blow dryer and was like, whoa, do we need to talk about this? Like, listen
trying
to
to
how you
prove?
sound
Yeah.
right now. And I was like, no, 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 no. It's a bit, it's a joke, of
You're like, it's
course.
not that deep. Yeah.
It's not that deep. But then as I was falling asleep, I was like,
Is it that deep?
I was like, I am saying it. It is
Yeah.
right. Like it's funny, but it also is making fun of a version of myself. So I was doing a meditation on Insight Timer that I love. I will link it. It's a kind of like a bedtime visualization. It's very PMR, very progressive muscle relaxation. So it's visualizing different parts of your body and like sinking into them. So as I'm listening to that, I was letting myself feel in the different parts of my body where this shadow felt.
Mm-hmm.
Like I felt it. I always feel everything in my chest and my heart.
Same. Yeah.
Like this is always where my anxiety
yeah,
lives.
me too.
But I also kind of felt it in my gut and a little bit in my head. So like when you're doing the body scan, you can feel it. So I'm listening to this body scan. I'm doing it. As I'm doing that, I bring up my Pen 15 preteen inner child shadow. And I just was letting myself feel. And it was basically just like feeling rejected. Like I was like, oh, even in me making fun of you, like I can make fun of you because I love you so deeply and I know your value. And this is me like speaking to my shadow. But even in doing that, I know it didn't make her feel good. And I'm sorry for making
Yeah.
jokes at your expense. And I sat with her, like I pictured her in my head, sat with her and said, I'm sorry for making jokes at your expense. This is how I actually feel. Like gave the little pep talk that I felt like I needed to hear.
Yeah.
And then I just sat with the feelings of rejection. All the times I felt I rejected myself, all the times I felt rejected by other people, all the times I didn't feel good enough. And I'm still being guided through my body. So I'm feeling physically in my body where rejection lives with no intention to solve the problem, just to
Yes.
feel it and hold space for it. And it took a while, it took 20 minutes. And I was feeling it through my body and I was just sitting there and being with it. And then after a while, it dissipates. And then, of course, as I'm doing this, I'm like, oh my fucking God, we're literally filming Unpacking shadow work tomorrow. And I had this little moment of like, how fucking serendipitous is that?
Oh, yeah.
And then that let me laugh enough and put like a little bit of space to be like, oh, the universe, am I right? And it kind of made it funny and it just all slowly dissipates and my body felt better. I felt her kind of be like, okay, thanks. And that was it.
I love that happened
Went to
to you
sleep.
last night and that you had that experience.
I was like, of course I did. But so that's a way that I do it. Like you can feel things come up, feel it into your body. Don't try to solve the problem. Imagine them, give them the pep talk they need, spend however much time. And I think another one of my favorite go-to exercises for like getting into shadow stuff is if you're going to do something that feels really fun or really exciting for you or like a new career opportunity or walking into a new day, first day of a new job. Remember that marketing girlie asked a question recently, new job girl that we were talking to in the Q&A? Picture your shadow self, your most shameful, rejected, unlovable self. Picture them and be like, you helped get me here. You're coming with me. Like when I'm sitting at the table in this meeting today, talking about my badass salary that I just got at this new job, you're here and you're a part of it and you helped me get here. So picturing your shadow self and bringing them in to important things in your life, like you said, with you at the driver's seat, but with honoring their role in helping you get here and being like, this is a part of you too, brings more love to that version of self. Like it's one of my favorite ways to practice it.
Yeah. That's something that I've been playing with a lot lately because, I mean, you know how I always have like a favorite buzzword of the fucking month? And I feel like the last 2 days it's been like, you're your own secret sauce, like blah, blah, blah.
You have said secret sauce a lot.
Secret sauce. And it's because that's what I'm thinking
Reminds
a
me
lot
of Board
about.
and Brew.
Yeah. And it's making me think about that because of wanting to host more and like be on camera more and all these things. And coming from the type of journalism that I was in and like that side of editorial media that I was in, that's very buttoned up. It's very like, design is a very like showy, elitist.
Well, it's about taste.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about taste. It's about like making like who's the most elegant in the room and like things like that.
Yeah.
And being like that buttoned up version of me that like I had to be to excel at that job. And that's great. Like you're not going to be like, you know, fucking like trucker's mouth, like in an office space. Like that's fine. Like, and I find myself sometimes being like, ugh, did you have a stick up your ass? And I'm like, no, because that's what you had to do to be good at your fucking job. Like
you're also
not gonna be talking
representing
like
something
this.
that like they were setting the precedent that you had to be representative of
Which
their
like,
standards.
is not necessarily bad.
No.
Like that's my point is that like these versions of self that we illuminate are not, it's like what you needed to do. And like it's not always bad to be able to be a chameleon and whatever. But I think that like the way that my shadow comes into that is because of that same like you want attention narrative of like
Mm,
because you want to be on TV, you're vapid,
mm,
you want attention, you're not smart enough to do anything else. Like
mhm.
that whole thing that comes into my brain is like now when I'm realizing like, oh, you mean the secret to a lot of people's success is like them
Inherently who they
and
are as
I,
is.
right? And I now gotta do that. And look, a lot of people have had a lot of success of being everything other than them,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
That's not what I want.
Mhm,
That's not what I want. And so playing with that idea and like getting like just curious.
mhm,
Like I'm not solving anything. I'm just like seeing how I'm moving in the world. I even notice it in the way that I talk on this podcast. Like I talk
mhm,
a lot more freely.
mhm.
I am still freaked out to share
Yeah,
shadow stuff freaks me out to share in
same.
public. And so sometimes I get nervous sharing this type of stuff on the internet. Because even though we have our little community that feels really safe, I think about like the social media aspect of it of like, okay, these clips are gonna live somewhere other than like the podcast app.
Mhm.
And that freaks me out because I'm like, I'm exposing myself to like, I don't know what vampires are out there. I don't know what like people are wishing me ill. Like, I have
Mhm,
no idea. And
mhm.
it scares me.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's why we really resonated when Jesse said, "Share from the scar, not the wound." Like, it's so much
Mm,
easier to share aspects of the shadow that's like, I've integrated this in a way where, like, go ahead and make fun of it because 'cause I've been so much meaner to myself, you can't hurt me, versus, like, other ones that still feel more precarious, does not have to be public domain.
yeah.
They don't, frankly.
Now I'm like, do I take everything back that I just said?
No, are you kidding? No, it was lovely. And also, like, the more we do this, the parts that we are willing to share and are like, "Ooh, it's uncomfy, but I'm gonna do it anyway." Like, that's where the magic happens. That's where the
Yeah.
healing happens.
I think I just never want to come off as someone who doesn't take accountability for their actions. Because I have taken, like,
What would that say about you if you didn't?
selfish bitch. You don't care. I don't know.
And then why is being selfish bad?
Well, I think there's like ways you could hurt people. That's the thing. It's like I don't want to dismiss the shit that I did that I know was hurtful, but I also can hold space for the fact of like the other part of it.
Boom.
Yeah.
And those 2 things are so true and exist at the same time.
Yeah.
And people need to hear that.
Her. Thanks for the therapy.
Do we have anything else to say? I mean, I have a lot more to say, and
Yeah.
I would love, again, like, I think it'll be so cool to have a guest on to really get into, like, the nitty-gritty of other ways to explore it, but I think it's fun to just talk about our perspective and how we've been going through it the past couple of years and, like, what it's looked like for us.
Yeah. Ooh,
The starting point.
it's a
It's a
starting
starting
point.
point.
I think we share just to get someone else comfortable with being a little curious
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's uncomfy.
Boy, is it.
I'm uncomfortable.
Boy,
I'm
is
like, I
it.
need to do some jumping jacks.
Okay, let's do
All right,
it.
ciao.
Let's drink some coffee and do some jumping jacks.
All right, thanks for listening.
We'll put a lot of resources in the show notes. Maybe some journal prompts.
Yeah, download Co-Create if
Co-Create
you're
has some
interested.
great shadow journal prompts.
Yeah.
It's sticky stuff. It's sticky stuff. But like when you're willing to, what is that quote? That Rumi quote? Like the darkness is where you like can let the light in.
Yeah,
It's so
it's
true
something like
about the
that.
shadow. Like
Yeah.
you just like, you unlock. I love myself more than I ever have in my entire life because of doing this work.
Oh my
And
God,
loving
it's so
yourself
worth
is just
it.
like, it's
Ugh.
so worth it.
Yeah.
Even if you do lose people, the people that you find that are loving you for you, like it's, we only get this one life. I know mortality salience resonates with me perhaps more than the average Joe in some instances, just because like I lost so many people in my family so young. So like it's just like every day it's so abundantly clear to me how fast this life is. And it's
Yeah.
just not fucking worth it to waste it being anyone other than yourself. You get one chance in this body right here, right now to do this.
Yeah.
Just fucking do it your way.
Well-
You're gonna die no matter what. You're gonna die. Like, just fucking do it your way. You get one chance.
Yeah. No,
I don't
you're
know.
right.
It just hits me every day. Like, that shit is weighted on me every day.
And for those who are scared, I fucking feel you.
Yeah.
But trust me when I tell you that when you're on the other side of it, you can't look back.
You can't.
There's no other,
There's no
way,
other way to
to
move.
move.
There's no other
You
way
can't.
to move.
You have to live in your authenticity because you know how fucked up it feels to betray yourself again.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
just won't do it.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I'll just end on saying that and saying how like the freedom that I have felt the last 5 years of like genuinely loving myself and being like, you're a really good person.
Yeah.
And your actions reflect it.
Yeah.
And even when you fuck up, your mistakes are new mistakes. You're not just like repeating your patterns. And like, yeah, that dumb bitch at 16 didn't know any better.
Yeah.
Like, that's okay too.
Yeah.
Like, loving all of that and not like hiding her in a little corner.
Don't you wish leaders of the world did shadow work? I think we'd exist in like a very,
Should be a
very
prerequisite to being the
different
president.
collective society. Yeah.
That's the thing. Okay, that's I like to end that there.
Yeah.
Because the work that you do on yourself lends itself to how you fucking move in the world.
Absolutely. I mean,
and wouldn't we all just be better people?
Like, we literally forget each individual human is like one drop in the ocean, and think about how fucking powerful the ocean is. Like, if we all collectively do this work, and like, it's just, here's the thing. My mom's favorite quote, be the change you wish to see in the world, is so trite, and it's a bumper sticker, and it's like arguably one of the most profound things ever said. Like, all that that ripple effect cannot go understated, overstated.
Absolutely.
Whatever.
All right.
Do it for the collective.
Do it for the collective.
If you don't love yourself enough yet to do it for you, do it for the collective, and you'll learn to love yourself along the way.
And if you want kids, do it for your fucking kids. Yeah.
For real. Anyway, you know what might be fun?
I keep being like, ciao, and then we keep like
I know,
talking
sorry.
more.
You know what might be fun? A shadow Q&A. Like, for us specifically. Of course, we'll still have a guest on and like get into this deeper, but it might be fun to do a shadow Q&A because I know we're kind of introducing this for the first time. So if people have specific cues for us about our experience, ask them. That could be fun.
That could be fun. Thanks for challenging me with this episode.
Same, ditto. That was really nice.
Love you.
Thanks for triggering me last night.
Yeah. Bye.
Not you personally, but you know what I'm saying. Love you. Bye.
How's it going, y'all? It's Aaron. Don't let your Monday suck. Don't have those Sunday scaries. I'm tired of everybody waking up in the week saying, shit, it's Monday. You know what goes down? TMV releases every week on Mondays. Make sure you rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching YouTube, yes, TMV has a YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and ring that noti bell and never miss a thing. And also, join the TMV Familia by joining the Thoughts May Vary Patreon and by following at Thoughts May Vary Pod on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you for listening.
Great.
There you go.
Thanks, AB.
Got y'all.